Hello, Leon. Oh, you're already in here. Is that what you were trying to tell me?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Hi.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. Pilot. I saw the video. That it was quite amazing.
Yeah, it was quite amazing. It was absolutely super amazing. Hello, Tess. Is this your flat?
Yes, this is my kitchen.
You're doing well.
It's yeah, I despite all the aggravation, it's a nice place. I'm happy with it.
Where's it located?
I am on Kew Bridge, so I'm walking distance into both Kew Gardens and Chiswick, sort of in between the two.
Good. I hope to see you maybe for lunch or something before the symposium.
I'll be here. I
I
would
was,
love that.
I was lucky enough for us last week, Dini. I had lunch with Tess, coffee and lunch,
Hmm?
and we even got to try where we're planning to have the Future of Text dinner, so she could check dietary things and stuff. So that was very useful.
Is it
It was
good?
delicious. It was fantastic.
Yeah,
Good.
it's people I know well. So Leon, extremely happy to see you. A couple of questions. Number one, how are you, Dad?
Good. Sometimes I get enough sleep, and
You have another
overall,
baby?
no, no, just the same one.
Okay. I was gonna say,
Just
oh my
one,
God.
luckily.
Yeah, luckily you can say in all meanings of the word good. Do you still think you'll be able to make the future of text? We're obviously certainly hoping so.
I'm talking to the boss, and I haven't put all the pieces together, airplane ticket, etc. But I will let you know ASAP. Hopefully this week. Would love to come.
There's no urgency. We just really want you to be here, obviously. And of course, you're welcome to stay here. You'll probably be sharing bed with Fabienne, but I'm sure that'll be fine.
I do that all the time. It's fine.
So romantic.
So romantic, yes. You will need to leave at 9. Okay. So a new thing now is the first 15 minutes of the meetings will be updating on the main coding side of things. So Leon, I'm very glad you're here for that. So then we move over to what you and Fabian will be presenting. I think for the for that thing, hang on, just checking something. All right, I'll just run through some things so we don't waste time. If someone's not here, they're not here. Some people, including Mark, are on holiday, which is fine. Please feel free to interrupt. This is an extremely short thing before I showed you what Fabian has actually made. Having worked on different kinds of interaction systems, we're at a point now for this phase, we just need something that works, gosh darn it, right? So we're thinking along the lines of context menus, same as you would have on a computer, but just much cooler in XR. So all of this is up for discussion, and I hope that it won't be like this when we're all done. So it's something to think about and have input. First thing is you prepare to pinch, you put your fingers together, and then you pinch roughly in the same spot. And then what you do, when I made the slideshow, I didn't realize you'd see my hands. You pull with one of your hands towards you, like you're pulling out a string. Doesn't matter which hand it is. And that then results in a ring menu appearing in roughly that area. Part of the reason for that is the mana menu that we have is great, but the limitations are actually huge when you actually look at what can be tracked right now, which is just incredibly annoying. So we have the notion of a ring menu. So when it appears, so it is logically cut into wedges. So you may or may not have to touch the specific command depending on the realities of the coding. So if you want to execute something, let's say institutions, when you let go, that's when it happens. So it's not another pinch. So you would pinch, move it with your fingers, you're over the target, you let go, and it happens, right? If there is a sub ring, that's indicated by having a border around the text or some other graphic device, boom, the previous ring goes away. Hopefully, there won't be too many nestings because that gets tricky, right? So I'm halfway done. That's how simple this is. The ring menus, context menus will be different depending on whether you select nothing, one item, or many items. This is entirely stolen based on my work in the map in Author because that's what I know. I hope as we learn more about XR that will change, but we got to start somewhere. So Here we have one sub-ring or sub-menu called Add. So if you go in there, that would be what you see on the left. Add a new, whatever we're going to call it, concept, item, whatever, and link. On the menu on the left, it dynamically shows only what is on the map. So you cannot choose to see people if there are no people on the map. That is a design challenge in XR with the ring, because in a 2D menu, it's really easy. But if we live with this circle and it changes what's there, that may not be optimal. So we have to look a little bit about anchoring and so on, right? So you can see the ones below are dynamic, depending on what's there. The ones above is the submenu. On selecting one item, it's very different. You can choose to select connected, which means it lets go of the one thing you have, and only the things that are selected, connected will be selected. Select something similar, select one person, and now you've selected all the people. Or edit the thing, the title or whatever. That's just split in 3, which should be a very easy thing to make, right? Finally, am I doing some massive transition? Okay, here it goes. If you have several items, this is probably the biggest challenge because it's easy to make a mess. At some point, we want hypertext, spatial hypertext kind of things in a mess. That's good. Other times we want to put some shape to it. So here we have 3 submenus: align, distribute, and sort. How we do that in XR, maybe one of them will be turn the text into a cube. I don't know. Let's find out. And the select connected is similar to what you saw previously. Hide not selected just means that everything that isn't connected to this or selected will go away, which is good when it's very complicated. The contract one on top was previously called collapse. Means that whatever you've selected, you get to give it a name, and it's just one thing. And that's it. So then we jump over to the reality of what Fabian has done, which now is listed under today's, I didn't want to edit it. Hang on, going to show you live. 1 second, Zoom things are. So 1 second. Oh. Can't I make that full screen? Okay, I'll do it this way. Do you see the string thing? So you pull it out, pull it long enough, and it results in the ring. And things can happen. So that is how we are moving towards that kind of interaction. Everybody's so quiet. Isn't it cool to see the beginning of doing something and you get options? Hi, Peter, Rob, and Peter. Yeah, and Jimmy too. Hi. So we are only spending a few more minutes on this. We're moving over to Leon and Fabienne. So any questions or comments? I'm just looking at the link. Oh yeah, related steps. That's really important. Thank you, Fabienne. So the provocation of showing you this today is for you to think about, you're building some kind of a thing in XR space that is related to knowledge. And of course, you can manually move things around. What are the other things you want to be able to do? Right? If you tell us that, then maybe we figure out a way to put it in the menu. And maybe some of these can be gestures. Dini and I had a very useful discussion over a period of time of how much should be presented to the new user and how much should be developed by a more experienced user. Context menu is kind of a cheat for that. Once a person knows about a context menu, they learn the commands over time. Fabienne, please speak what you wrote.
Yeah, just to clarify a bit that in the example you show, first, when the size, let's say, of what you pull the string changes color to kind of evocate tension of a string. If you pull a little bit, it can be red or orange and green. It's also to highlight what, or rather to implement what Brendel told us a few times, namely to have a cancelable action. You start the thing. Brendel is there, so that's good. His advice has been to do things you can cancel. You start to do the action, and maybe halfway through, you're like, maybe actually, I don't want to do this. So that's what the color is about. The color of the string evokes that you can go back to it. And to clarify also the color change. So when you pull that text or code snippet through a ring, something applies to it. And what applies to it in that example, to make it very clear, or hopefully at least, it's to change the color of the text. So you have a blue ring, you pull the text through, the text becomes blue. But it's just an example. You can change the size of the text, you can do a search with that text to another set of other text snippets. I mean, it's whatever you make it to be, basically. You can type those comments, attach them to the circle or the disk so that they become what you pull through. But becoming blue by going through a blue circle is like the most obvious way, I think, to showcase it.
Tess.
I'm wondering, I don't know if you saw, I'm already trying to do these things with my hands and follow along. It's very cool. This might sound very rudimentary, but I'm just wondering, with what you just showed us, could you talk us through a potential user case?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
what do you see in your head? What would you use this for pragmatically in your own research or writing?
I can. And I see that we have Brendel here as well today. So I'm going to go through this and answer that question. So the beginning bit, and Brendel, we now have a notion of a ring menu. You can see me as well, right? Okay. The notion is you pinch your fingers together, pull one finger out. That results in this ring menu with options. So it becomes a context menu. So this is initially just taken from the map in author, just to have somewhere to start, right? Tess, let's say that you want to select all the people that you have in the space and move them over in the corner in an organized way, right? So you would just start with selecting like this, choose person, and then you would do the menu again. And then you would do, then you would have selected many, so forget the one item.
When you say all the people, do you mean all the authors whose pieces I have in this piece of in this volume in my virtual library of articles?
What I mean is, this is all based on what's in the volume, meaning space, to use Rob's brilliant language. So it is not meant externally, no. So this is how it works here. So let's say, select similar. Well, these haven't been tagged with anything. Yeah, so here's a person, select similar, and then it selects all the people.
Okay.
So
People have written stuff in your database or in your space.
in the current volume / space you're in, yes. Now these have been contracted. So apart from when you do that, you don't see them, but you see top right here, tiny people inside these cool little arrow things. That's how they are. To be able to contract something is really, really important, right? So if you now do select similar, and now they're all selected, I can actually move them. And because I know the keyboard shortcuts, I can order them like this. I can also sort them in different ways, right? Which is kind of useful. So this is the kind of stuff that we need to be able to do in XR really quickly and smoothly, because this is just a small laptop screen. When you have all of this in your space, it can get messy really quickly. So if we then go back to this presentation, the notion is basically just the context menu style, but in a circle. Now, a lot of it is to organize stuff, to select stuff. If you have many things, to temporarily hide. I mean, I'll show you that briefly, actually. It's very powerful. So if we're in here and I've chosen this and there's too much, I just hit spacebar and it shows that and nothing else. right? It starts making this useful. This is just my journal, so there aren't that many things. So that was over 15 minutes. And on the listing for today, there's also a live version. So you can try what Fabienne has built. I strongly encourage you to do that whenever you have a chance. We will try to update these before every Monday meeting. Brandel, please pick what you wrote.
Circular marking menus are the standard practice these days in applications like Blender and Maya, anything where you're doing sort of quick gestural things to be able to kind of move between modes and undertake certain actions. So it's been kind of leaned on in a place where people are sort of thinking spatially for a number of years. I think it was introduced by Maya in about 95, 96. Other operating systems and people have flirted with it, but it's really stuck in a way that defies, both like product marketing people and patent attorneys in the 3D world, where people just sort of, no, we're going to find a way to use them. So I think it's a really useful choice.
That's really good to hear. And it's a good start. But oh yeah, Fabienne just showed a version here, an image. But also, hopefully, two things will happen. One, it'll be intuitive after a while. You do this and like you do a squiggle like this, it means you go through this and that. Like I've said many times, sign language. But also, it doesn't have to be a ring after a while. Hopefully, it'll be a sphere. So pushing away and towards will have meaning too. Right? Hopefully twisting your hand will have meaning. For instance, sorting. Sometimes you want to do a reverse sort. The pathetic way we have it in 2D is an item for each. But if you can do this and then you go that and then you do a thing, we don't know yet. We have to play. It does a reverse thing of what you did. So the opportunity is great. And thank you for that image, Fabienne. So Fabienne and Leon, very excited to give the floor over to you. The very virtual floor. Okay, screen, wall.
Virtual floor, virtual floor, nice. Can everybody hear me? All right, nice. Fabienne, what format are we going to do? Like, how about I sort of guide everybody through the slides and you add some context whenever you feel like it?
Sounds perfect to me.
All right, great. Then let me start by sharing my screen. Can everybody see a black logo?
Yes.
All right. So then, Fabienne and I are going to talk about something we've worked on in the last year, which is called XR Shell, or in short, XRSH. And it's also supported by NLNet, which is a very cool foundation who is supporting open source software development, interoperability, and standards. And the big picture is next generation internet, NGI 0, which is also supported by the EU. Yeah, by the EU, basically. Just to jump straight to the thing we made, we basically made a terminal inside WebXR. So the terminal or shell usually lives on your local machine, not in the web browser. And definitely not in a immersive WebXR session. But what we did, we basically brought it into WebXR, basically. So we brought something very old school and very fundamental back into something really modern and exciting. It's basically an old interface doing new tricks. That's kind of what we worked on. It started basically as a debugging project. We wanted to debug things in WebXR live inside our immersive session instead of going back and forth.
Okay, so let's
between,
dive into the editors.
um,
So here is XR Shell open.
yeah, sorry, I just heard myself in the video, which was a bit confusing. But anyways, without having to exit immersive sessions and enter it and putting on your headset and putting it off, we were curious, like, how would it be if we would have access to a terminal inside our session? And well, the results were mixed, but at some point we started to experiment, and we even came up with ways of starting small applications or ways to debug our scene via the file system, which was also a very interesting way of basically seeing all your 3D objects as files on your file system. That's a really funny way to look at your 3D scene as well. There is a website which is this one. It's xrsh.isvery.ninja. Let me check here. So yeah, let me start first with a bit of background of the terminal and the shell, because maybe some people are not really into this kind of thing. But I have some slides here. I have to respect the slides here. A bit about me. I'm Leon. You can find me here on Mastodon. I have a website, 2wa.isveryninja. I am mostly active working on XR Fragments, which is basically hyperlinking for 3D models. It's also it's very much like what OMI Group has as well. It's called OMI Link. It's also compatible with this. Jimmy, very nice to see you in this meeting as well. So for people who know that, they basically have some really cool GLTF extensions. I'm also a big fan of GLTF. It's a 3D file format, just like in the old days, VRML was a 3D file format. It's a very, very lightweight and useful one. And they have OMI Link, and this is basically the hyperlink in your 3D models. And this is for GLTF, and XR Fragments is basically that, but file format agnostic. So it's basically watching this whole space and looking at how can we connect all 3D file formats. So that's a little bit about me. But we also have another person here, and Fabien, maybe you can tell a bit about yourself. And sorry to put you on the spot like this.
Well, that was not expected. Yes. So hi, I'm Fabien. Before even talking about myself, I have to clarify that you said we, but it's more for royal we in the sense that you started that project. I was very grateful for you to bring me along because I do think it's a really cool idea. I think it sounds a bit weird and convoluted initially, bringing a flat terminal to, let's say, the modern or the contemporary space of knowledge, and yet to me it makes so much more sense. So yeah, I think you brought me on a crazy ride there, but I'm really grateful for it. And to introduce myself a bit, I'm a prototypist focusing on WebXR, so VR and AR on the web, and this is exactly the kind of project that I love because, well, it is open source already, as you mentioned with NLNet, so it means the entire world can potentially benefit from it, no matter how crazy, compose from it, so making more prototype, which I think is, of course, a core aspect of prototyping. If you play with open bricks, well, you can build more, so this is brilliant. And I have to be honest, weird. Again, the weird part is to me very exciting because if you do something like if you do a CMS, a content management system, it can potentially be exciting, but in practice for prototyping, a lot has been done. So this kind of project is really what I thrive to contribute to. So yeah, that's about me. And then for those of you who wants to dig more, the website with a lot of what I do is indeed online with a quite actual from very old things like 10, 15, 20 years. Things are still on it, videos on it. Some of the project here is on it, XR Shell, but also on the future of tech and Sloan. It's there. If you get lost, don't worry. Feel free to ask me. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was a great intro. And later we will also discuss a bit why it's very important to still have access to 10/15 years old JavaScript even or technology, because that's what we also started to need for our project, because inside WebXR our resources are very scarce. We need to respect the frame rate, we need to respect a lot of things, and a lot of new technology, new JavaScript libraries, if we would pull in one library, then the whole thing kind of it tanked the whole performance. So at some point we really ended up with some really old style JavaScript, very vanilla, very lightweight. So thank you, Fabien, for keeping track of all these libraries, because it's very very useful. Is my screen still sharing? I hope so. So just for the people who are like, what the hell is a shell? Or sorry, what is a shell, to be more correct? It's basically access to a virtual world of commands and devices via text. So not only is it an interaction by typing commands, but you can also I think this came with the internet. You can also basically teleport to other systems or computers and execute commands there, which is really insane. That, like, if you type some characters and then some milliseconds later it's received at the other side of the world, it's really crazy if you think about it. It's also, in a way, you can also look at it like an interactive ebook reader and writer, because there's really a writing and reading relationship here. It's not like, I think the web browser is mostly reading, or that's how it started maybe, but this is really a two-way interface, which is very interesting. It's not for everybody, but it's very useful to a lot of people, and that's why it has never disappeared. It's also a very symbolic adventure and a very symbolic technology, because the terminal basically only deals with characters and character sets, symbol sets, whereas the higher order applications like graphical user interfaces or games, they really focus on pixels and being able to manage pixels for you. The pixels are not really the concern of the terminal. It's like symbols in and symbols out. And it's also very accessible. People who have reading problems, they can have a screen reader. It's very easy to hear what is going on in a shell. And also, you can also talk to a terminal by having a translation layer in there to detect your voice and convert it into commands. So it's a very cheap interface. Cheap in economic way. You can easily make it accessible. It also educates you. That's kind of like an anecdote of my working life. Like a lot of things, especially the English language, I have learned via the terminal. Like, there's a lot of things I wanted to get done, and I think the grammar is very basic, so it's very to the point, short sentences. So it's, if you're a beginning learner of a language, it's a very nice way to start. It might not be the best way to communicate afterwards, because it sounds a bit robotic, but hey, it worked for me. It's also local first, so a shell is usually on your system and you can only operate on your system. There is something called SSH, Secure Shell, which allows you, like I said before, to teleport to another server to execute commands there, which is quite amazing if you think about it. It's also playfulness. In some shells, you can pipe things, you can script things, and you can also live code things. You can have immediate feedback of what's going on or what's going wrong. It's also a whole ecosystem of people who are familiar with the same free open source tools. So you have like commands like ls to list a directory, or date to see the date. Like these are, it's almost a language on its own. And you know, everybody who uses the shell starts to learn automatically about these magic textual spells, so to speak, because if you put them together, they become like magic spells to get things done, the GTD. There's also a whole ecosystem of people sharing one-liners. A one-liner is basically a magic spell which does some really powerful stuff in one line. And I have fond memories of working at companies and, you know, solving problems with one-liners and showing it to colleagues and laughing. And, you know, sometimes it's a bit silly, and it's really, it's a cool, they also call it shell golf, if I'm correct, or shell script golf, or like the website says, command line fu, like kung fu.
One quick thing, if you can go back to the previous slide, please. First, yes, it is genuinely fun. I know it sounds weird, but really think of it as a puzzle. Like somebody gives you a task to do, let's say like here listing the quotes in a certain order or part of it, and it's really like, what is this? It's not a game, it is not fun. But as you start to grasp the problem and also like the different ways it can be done, or also get hints, sometimes it's hard, you don't know what to do. So this kind of thing, it's generally fun. Initially it's not, because you don't understand anything, but again, as you get hints one after the other, it becomes more and more also challenging, because you want to do better than, let's say, this done in 1 line or 2 lines or 50 characters. You want to do it the golf way in these less keystrokes. So it's really like little brain teasers. And for the aspect, what you mentioned before also about the like a magical spell kind of, that's also what my wiki is about. Like you mentioned 15 years old lines of JavaScript. Those lines can be really like as if you were invoking magic, and you don't even, if you come back first a year later at the same kind of problem, like how the heck do I solve this? If it's part of your node, you saved. If you're part of your node and you have comments explaining a bit how it's done, you double saved, because then you even can compose out of it. And what happens quite often, just last week, somebody, I have to brag a little bit, thanked me for my wiki, because it was for Android comments. You have ADB kind of things also through shell. So it also means some of that stuff, some of those commands, they are still relevant 15, 20, even I want to say 50 years later. So it's crazy how those things are not like one shot and then the technology is deprecated. It keeps on being relevant. So I really encourage, yes, to have notes on this kind of things so that you don't feel lost or confused as you start. But also, yeah, if you can do so publicly, it really helps everyone.
So true, so true. And to be honest, I don't understand all these one-liners, to be honest. So don't be intimidated, because yeah, no, there are so many commands. It's impossible to know all of them. These days, a shell is also forms. I think they have been catching up on the whole graphical user interface thing. It's still a fact that, like, if you want to create a user interface and you want to do it very cheap, you know, the command line, the shell, is still a very fast way to do these things these days. Making a graphical program, a graphical user interface program, it's of course it's easier, but you know, there's more dependencies and all these things. So there's still a case to create graphical shell applications for many things. It's also self-empowerment and automation, because like everything what you type, you can sort of put it in a text file and then run it as a script. So then it suddenly becomes a robot, so to speak, doing the work for you, so you don't have to type it anymore. So that's really cool. And I think Fabien agrees with me.
I do, and it's actually one of the most precious files I have on my computer. I put the name so I don't have to spell it, but it's bash RC. It's because it's kind of, you can imagine your toolbox. If you're a craftsman, your toolbox is organized a certain way. It have a certain set of tools, but I think it's rare for craftsmen to make your own screwdriver, let's say. But this, what the shell allows, and files like bash RC, when you can reinvoke later on and compose, you make your own command, is exactly this, as if you had all the screwdrivers you wanted. And if you want something absolutely weird, again, you can do this. You can share with others. There is no secretness in there. So that's really the power of it, being able to transform some super weird one-liner, as was shown earlier, to something that you call like demo, for example, as in this current slide. It is really empowering and so very precious, because it's tool for thought in the most basic sense, that day after day, if you repeat the same command, you give it a name, and then you can compose with other commands you or anybody else have created.
True. Frode?
Yeah, this is very, very exciting. And there are several issues that kind of collide in a good way. One of them is, I'm a normal power user, meaning I do all the keyboard shortcuts, I can fly through Photoshop and so on. But I wouldn't be able to last more than a minute in a command line, because it is a black hole to me. So that reminds me of how NLS worked. And I put a video to 38-second walkthrough of NLS, where Doug had this system where you would type in a command, and if you couldn't remember the possible legal options, you would hit the question mark, and the whole screen would fill up with possible commands that you could choose from. So it was a very early kind of context menu in that sense. So I'm wondering, I mean, I get very excited with active text, obviously, in this community. One of the things I've been working on today with Author has been to paste Markdown and have it be converted into Author. So bold is bold, headings are headings, so on. Turned out to be very difficult, but it works. To be able to get to the point of Ken Perlin's example, Leon and Fabien, what do you think people like me who want to get into this but are intimidated by what looks like weird complexity, may not always spell correctly? And Leon, your point about learning a language through this is really fascinating. Do you have any thoughts? I mean, especially bringing this into XR that you've done, which is phenomenal. And you mentioned graphical interfaces. Have you thought of how to help people like us? Thank you.
Fabien, can you help me with this?
Yeah, with pleasure. So we did, and I think like here, Leon is throwing me the mic back, is because there are, to be honest, it's not the core of the project. The core of the project is not to be pedagogical or to help people on board on the command line. The shell is a prerequisite, let's say. So I want to be upfront that if you've never used the shell and you start with the shell in VR, it's going to be a challenging experience. That being said, if you want to learn, and I really recommend it, because again, it's 50 years old, and still I was answering a bit to Tess on the chat, the cloud, like whatever, even right now we use Zoom and all the AI stuff, the backend for all those ChatGPT and whatnot, all that runs on commands that run in the shell. Like it's still modern, it's still useful, like 50 years after it's been invented. So it's definitely not a waste of time. And my opinion, personal and professional, to be honest, is that it's still going to be relevant in 50 years. So that's nuts. And it goes from ChatGPT to IoT. Namely, if you have a light bulb and it has a firmware, the way to update it, to send command to it, all that is through the shell or equivalent of the shell and command lines. So it's not a waste of time to learn. It will be hard initially, But I think one way that makes it easier is there are a lot of examples online, and we can put links after in the chat, so that you don't run the command of your computer. Because the number one fear is like, okay, I run this command and it looks like how do you say a magical spell. What if I delete all my precious files? Like, you know, the report you just spend like a month writing, you might delete it. Don't do that. Don't run commands you don't understand on your shell, the famous terminal. You will make mistakes, and we all do. Just to be clear, as a professional, I also delete files by mistake. Just a month ago, I think I downloaded my downloads directory. So shit happens. So don't do that. Don't do it on your computer. Do it on a virtual computer. This way, no matter the mistakes you do, you'll be safe. So that will, in my opinion, that's the number one thing. And there are some of those virtual environments to learn. They're also pedagogical. Namely, they start by list the files, list a file of a certain type, apply something to those files, for example, move them all to a directory, and it's very gradual. So we'll put some links in the chat, but the number one tip is don't do it on your computer with your real files, because it's just, I mean, if you like to live on the edge, but I don't recommend it.
So thank you for that, Fabian. But one of the things that is really great about our community is that we have very, very different kinds of minds here. And one of the things I've learned, especially while teaching, is that when something may be easy for you, or well, for me, for the person, it may not fit someone else's brain, right? So it's not just a matter of that. It's almost like saying, well, if you want to make a painting, you just start with the eyes. It's easy, and you can undo it, you know, to be a bit jokey about it. But so I'm wondering here in the community if we can not only let people learn something like this more, but maybe provide the interactions whereby it can happen. I mean, one thing with IDEs that's exciting is the autocomplete functions that many of them have that are quite clever. You know, I could imagine a command line in space, but literally space. So that just like with a very simple question mark, you see, that may not be enough. But what if you could rotate it? What if you could move it and see, considering what is in your space, what are legal commands right now? What are the categories, right? Maybe we do, like we all hate Microsoft Word when it had too many buttons, right? It's not that long ago. But for fun, imagine a command line with like 50 buttons below it. I mean, it's a bit stupid, but it's, you know, you press the buttons and then it fills in and it helps you. I think something magical can happen. The fact that you guys put it into XR is mind-blowing. Maybe now more other kinds of brains can use it as well. Just a thought. Yeah, and thank you very, very much.
Yeah, and perhaps actually what you were showing in the beginning of the video call is also, there's also sort of command lines in there, also in Author. It's almost as if the command line is always somewhere, even if you type a URL into your web browser. There are all kinds of funny shortcuts, things appearing into your URL bar. It's also a command line or shell in a way. So it's very interesting how it appears also outside of a terminal application, even in a graphical user interface application. It's very interesting. One small thing I would like to plug here is Charm.land. They are doing quite some interesting work in this space you were talking about, Frode, about autocomplete, basically all kind of funny and crazy experiments to make command lines, whether it's in the terminal or shell or in a graphical user application. It's pretty interesting what they do. They even have like a way to create an application which can both function in the terminal, in the shell, but it can also act as a HTML web page. And I think this is a very cool multi-view kind of way of thinking, because every interface has its own advantages. And it's very interesting to see people try to come up with one sort of way of producing these kind of different interfaces. Going back to the presentation, so it's also semantical muscle memory, and what you said, Frode, is very correct. For some people, this muscle memory doesn't happen, or it doesn't click, or the muscle memory happens, not with shell or textual application, but more with, more visual, different kind of paradigms of applications. But it can also happen with the shell for some people. And then the next part is like, what is a virtual machine? Because we basically have a virtual machine in the browser in WebXR. It's basically a computer in a computer. So it's pretty funny if you think about it. Most operating systems are, Linux based somehow in some way or the other. And you have some kind of graphical layer on top. So it's Windows, Mac, etc. And it's pretty funny to then run a browser and then again inside there run a tiny operating system again. But it's possible, so it's worth exploring. This is kind of what made it possible. WebAssembly and WebXR. WebAssembly sort of broke the mold of web pages only being able to, run HTML or JavaScript. WebAssembly is sort of like the next stage. Like, hey, you don't need to write everything in JavaScript. You can just choose your own language, and then you can run everything in the web browser. Well, everything. You can run it in a very safe and isolated way. You can even run it on the server. Doesn't even have to be in the. It's pretty crazy technology, and this made it possible to run a small Linux distribution inside the browser while still having enough frames per second for WebXR to have an immersive experience, which we were quite amazed with. We were like, oh wow, this is possible, and it works on phones, on headsets, and it was pretty cool. So we thought, hey, let's explore this. Oh, this is an error. I want to open this. Oh, it doesn't let me open this this image, whatever. So, but we needed one more element, which was an optimized terminal emulator. Because if you look in the picture, there's quite some frame updates there. And normally a terminal only updates the symbol, which is needed to update. It's very efficient. But in WebXR, in a WebXR session, WebGL, we are in pixel world, and pixels are updated. And suddenly we had to sort of think from scratch again, like, oh, how can we not have this terminal tank our immersive session and tank the frames per second? And there is a very famous library, Xterm.js. It's very useful for having a terminal, a shell in the browser. But we found out that there's this trend of rewriting JavaScript libraries into TypeScript because it's very cool and convenient, I guess. But it was very heavy in our immersive session. So suddenly everything started to jitter, and it was not good. So we went back to let's say 1996 version or something, very old version. Suddenly things got better, and then we were like, well, it's still not good enough. We need this shell to be to run in a very discrete way, so it doesn't sit in the way. So we basically came up with we started to search for an even older terminal emulator in JavaScript. So we got a really old one. We optimized that one for WebXR. We introduced frame dropping, frame skipping, so that we wouldn't update the frames for every update, so that everything would run smooth. And then finally, we could have our sort of debugger on the side, being gentle to whatever is going on in our immersive session, in our experience, basically. We were still asking ourselves, why are we doing this? It's also a bit crazy and funny, but we are tinkering every day with the shell. So we thought, like, hey, it must make sense to be able to do the same, use the same tools and semantics inside in this immersive session as well. And it's a fact that all the operating systems on XR hardware, like MetaQuest or Vision Pro, they're quite restricted, and this is because of a lot of reasons. First of all, these companies need to ensure that the performance is good. That a user cannot do things which suddenly makes all the apps run very badly. That would not be great, right? And there's also security things. So I'm not an expert on this, but WebAssembly was there, so there is a lot of things we can still do, and that's why we basically brought our own operating system into this into WebXR, and it's a real operating system. It's not a fake simulation or something. It's a proper ISO file, so it's a real Linux distribution with memory and devices. And so, we also thought, like, the browser console, we don't have that in our immersive session. So should we bring that in, or maybe we should then think completely out of the box and just bring in the terminal, because that would be a bit more closer to what we're always using. And again, I already told it before, but being able to use tools which you already know is a big win. Another thing is, let me actually dive into the shell. I have a shell here. So here you can see welcome. There's actually also ways to store the state of your virtual machine to your local storage, so that your browser remembers that, for example, future of text is awesome. The browser can remember this state, so the next time or the next day, you can basically start exactly with where you left off. There's also remote storage. Remote storage is a relatively new protocol to store, basically to have your sort of like a Dropbox kind of or Google Drive kind of way, without being tied to any of those companies. It's more a protocol version of that. So it's like WebDev, but a bit newer. So there you can also store the state of your virtual machine to continue somewhere else later. So what we see here is our little shell. We also see a menu here below. These are basically shortcut commands, and this float is kind of basically what you already hinted at. These are actually shortcuts to files or scripts. So you don't have to type in this command in the shell. But it's nice to have a sort of launcher menu. If I use the command ls, then there's a directory called launcher. So I'm now listing the contents of the directory of this virtual file system. It's an yes, Frode?
This is where it gets interesting, and I really want you to continue. I'm only pausing briefly. So ls means list, right?
Yes, list.
Why in the world, and it's not rhetorical, it's a real question. Of course, the tilde and the slash means top level and all of that. Why do you need to write config slash and then launcher, not just launcher? That's the kind of stuff that's kind of new to get into.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It would be better to do that. Well, hold on. It's even possible. Check this out. So if I do this ls launcher, then you can see I just created a symbolic link. Forget about that. But you can see the contents now of the launcher, basically the buttons below in the bar. So these are basically scripts. So I'm not going to run them, but this is a way how you can build your own commands or toolbar. Does this work? No, this doesn't work. Oh, maybe I need to make it executable. I'm probably going too detailed already.
Thank you.
I need to.
I also saw that Ken has joined.
Never mind.
If you can give Ken a 15-second introduction to what you're doing, because it's so cool, then it'll be easier for him to follow. Please.
Sure. So what we're looking here is basically this is basically an A-frame application. It's a WebXR application, which is showing a small terminal running a very tiny Linux operating system. So we have a small, cute Linux operating system here, and it's basically interfaced to the 3D scene. So this is just what's going on here is WebAssembly and a Linux ISO image file. So it's an operating system, and this allows us to debug and basically tinker with our WebXR experience immersively. So we don't have to go back and forth, take off our headset, do something on our laptop and test it in VR. No, we basically have a small terminal in our XR experience, and we can debug stuff on the fly, and we can do all kind of funny things. I can even where to start? So first of all, what is also very weird and funny is that we can actually edit our current page or current experience. So we have a file called index.html, which is usually on a server somewhere, but we have it in our little tiny Linux system here. So now I'm launching an editor. So now I can basically see what's going on in the scene. This is A-frame code, but it can also be 3JS code. And I can now, if I delete, for example, this line with cylinder and this line with sphere, and I write the file, then you can see I just updated the file. And it even added a background, which is a GLTF, which also happened to be in that file. So I can live code this 3D scene. I can live code it in my immersive session with a Bluetooth keyboard. I can also edit this session wearing my headset while typing on my laptop keyboard, because it also supports a remote keyboard. So this is a really funny way of a hybrid way of editing a scene and having a terminal which is sort of interfacing with other hardware, so to speak. And another interesting paradigm we ended up with is basically, what if a directory is an experience? So, for example, what if I navigate a directory to a certain directory? How cool would it be if it updates the scene? Here you can see that now it says this is scene 3, and so it basically unloaded the previous scene and loaded this scene. And if I'm correct, if I leave this directory, then these objects disappear. And that's also a paradigm we came up with. This paradigm is called AutoEnv. It's basically when you enter a directory, it will check the directory. Is there a .env file? So I will now surf to this, let's say this scene3 file again, you can see that there is a .env file and a .envleave, and this is basically loading the index. It's very simple actually. If I'm displaying what's inside this .env, it's basically copying the index.html to the root. So this is a very funny way of navigating a file system and then having your scene synchronize accordingly. Fabien, go ahead. And apologies if I'm getting too technical already. I should watch out.
There were a couple of things I wanted to go back to. So I don't want to unpack too much, but Frode, also to go back to initial question about LS and tilde and all this. So that's a very compressed way basically to do a lot of things thanks to conventions. But it's still optional. Namely, if you want to type list instead of ls, you can do alias list equal ls. And you can, again, the whole point about this is it makes the shell yours. It's really part of making, thank you, it's happening live. It's to make the computer behave the way you want. And if you want it very verbose, you can do this. If you want it, if ls is too long, a lot of people compress ls to L, for example. When I start my shell on another service or machine, it's just S. So it's really, if you want it verbose, if you want it compact, it's entirely configurable. That's the beauty of it. And one thing that Leon mentioned twice at least, and that I think is crucial. So he mentioned live coding with a couple of examples of AutoEnv and going in and out of a dir directory, or using the physical keyboard or remote keyboard in the headset. All those things, there are habits or ways to prototype faster. Like a lot of this effort is put into how do we test fast so that we can explore the space of potential, knowing that most of it will not be good. And if it's not good and it's slow, it is just painful. And we don't want to do this. So a lot of work sounds, honestly, in retrospect, convoluted. But it's how do we test crazier things faster so that we can remove whatever is not good and then find the gold nuggets, let's say, or whatever you want to call it, inside. So a lot of effort might seem convoluted on the why, but the reason is iterating, testing faster. And there are a lot of ways like this, those conventions, not standards, that honestly work elsewhere, but that here with usage make a lot of it faster. That's it. Thank you.
I got my hand up. Good. Okay. So this is very, very exciting. So question for you guys. In what we're building here with Sloan, maybe we should try to find a way to integrate. Maybe we should integrate it wholesale, which would be amazing, but maybe also integrate it in a modular fashion. So in the ring menu, there can be access to at least launch this. Maybe there could be a subsection ring menu. Maybe it's even on the other hand or something different. So it's not for all users. But so that because one of the many brilliant things Fabien has in the spatial scaffolding is everything is changeable, right? So depending on what you select, to be able to launch this with the knowledge of where it came from could potentially be very, very exciting. This is where Leon and Fabien says, yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, we should do that. Actually, we can do it in two ways. It's basically, we can create our own shell. We don't need this whole, we can also choose to not use all this legacy Linux stuff. We can also just immediately, connect with the application. So if you type something, it's just a second layer in XRShell that you can load an ISO file, a Linux distribution. It's just a second thing. So it's not necessary. You can also use it without the Linux legacy, basically. So yeah, very good points. Also, what we see here is actually multiple terminals, so multiple shells. If I press Control A1, I'm basically going to the logs. There's tabs in the bottom, very minimalistically. I'm going from logs to extra shell, and here I can basically see my browser console in my immersive session. There's also a small manual here. So to go back to the sheet here, we have also integrated curl, which is a bit of a funny story as well. So curl is basically a way to get stuff from the web. So for example, I have a blog, and I could just watch or read my blog like this. FOSS tools I use could be Markdown, or so this is basically requesting. This is basically a URL bar which you're typing. So this is basically showing my my article. And the funny thing is also the links are directly clickable. So if I click one of these links, then yeah, this is the old shells were not able to do this, but in a way it's also becoming a bit like a browser. So curl is not the real curl, because there is a network device in this operating system, but that was way too slow. We just made a bridge to JavaScript, and now it's a bit faster. So another thing to talk about, more demos, yes, is what I'm also curious about. Maybe we can also talk about that after I do a little bit more demo. Is like, when did you successfully use the shell? And I'm really curious if people are using shells at all or not. And it's something I would like to know at some point. So this is the website. We have so the prototyping way is basically you create a directory, you put some files in there. It could be 3JS, could be A-frame. There's also it's a bit tiny here, but maybe I can show it here. There's also a way to start a command via the URL, which is it sounds very unsafe. You can disable it if you want, but it's an ephemeral virtual machine, so nothing unsafe. Yeah, it's totally fine actually. You can even start a scene or a command by passing a URI fragment. You can edit basically your file, your HTML file. And via a mechanism called iNotify, the file system knows, oh, something changed, let's update the scene. You can save your states, you can upload files or download files to and from your browser, from your local file system. You can zip stuff, you can download them. So it's a bit like a small IDE, integrated development environment. And yeah, regarding editors, we have also we have included some editors, very tiny ones, VI, MG, which is a Emacs stripped down version, Nano. But we have also included CodeMirror. CodeMirror is like VS Code is a very popular developers editor, and I think it uses CodeMirror. So we thought, why can't we use that? And it's basically a package. We have introduced the zip packages. So if you basically drag drop a zip package onto your terminal, it basically unzips that zip file to your file system, and then you can run a new command. In this case, CodeMirror or other things. So that's another way how you can extend your shell. We also have file system overlays, basically zip file, which basically you get as a sort of extra files in your operating system when you boot it. And what we also have is something really, we did some really cool experiments with Unix event hooks. So everything what happens in the system will trigger, there is a hook directory in the file system. And without explaining it too much, it's basically a way to have the file system be able to respond to anything going on in JavaScript. So it's kind of like connecting JavaScript events to the file system. But that's maybe a bit too technical. Let's go a bit lighter now, and let's maybe talk about some explorations in gesture management. We have this URL. I don't know if it's readable. I will put it in the chat as well. Fabien did some really cool experiments, for example, with custom keyboard integrations to an XR Shell terminal, because XR Shell can be used with a Bluetooth keyboard, a remote keyboard, or the system keyboard of the operating system, or the WebXR system keyboard. However, the sort of default system keyboard of WebXR is nice for entering some simple information, but you don't have all the characters or all the keys. So Fabien, maybe you could tell a bit about your explorations with coming up with custom keyboard integrations.
Yes, sure. So actually, if you could, let's say, press play the first video. And one of the idea there, so some of you also that are familiar with the Sloan project might have seen some of those keyboard entries. So it also addressed fraud when you're like, oh, what if you were to bring the two together? This is, let's say, the entry point. That's the kind of potential integration. And the idea is, well, if you do have a physical keyboard, honestly, use it. I mean, if you got to type a lot and edit some text, etc., use it. But if you don't, then you might want to have a keyboard. You might have the operating system keyboard, but that's not very configurable, and that's not necessarily spatial at all. Typically, the UI is flat. There were no keys. There were just images in front. So it's not enough. Yeah, perfect. You read my mind. And then you might want also to have the spatiality of it. So some of the interactions will happen, let's say displaying some debug information, but only within a spatial context. So for example, when you are within the sphere that was shown, but not if you're outside of it. Because it's kind of not a trope, but one of the challenge there, to be honest, is how much do we benefit from tools like the ISO and the shell, where they're primarily 2D, if not 1D, but we're in space. If we take the time to put the headset on, it is demanding, it hits up on your face, etc., etc. It deprives you from the reality of the space around you, so you must get benefit out of it. So some of those exploration are just that, namely, how do you avoid getting just on a panel, but you try to have both. So this is typing without the keyboard, where you just have, let's say, the gesture is starting a finger or not, and interacting with the content of the shell. And I think, yes, it's good. You were showing the video description. The links on the video description, they are either to live demo if it's feasible, which they should be, but it's not always. And there is at least always also the code, because you did a great job, Leon, with the different slides to avoid showing us too much code. But I think it's also crucial, as you started to mention, that the project is supported by NLNet, and thus everything is open source. And thus it's not just cool looking demo. I hope at least there are some, but it's also the link to the repository, so that if people think, oh, that's interesting, but as Frode hinted at, what if we were to integrate with this further project or that other project? So people can learn from it, including some of the challenges and some of the difficulty. So everything there is hopefully documented. This one is a gesture where I think we switched the color scheme based, again, not on typing, but on a gesture, namely having your palms up. A little bit echoing the one with the sphere before, which only happened within the sphere. Here it happened everywhere. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, very nice. I think maybe we can start a more open discussion now. I think let me just show the last slide because I was working very hard on this slide. Oh no, not that hard actually. So yeah, thank you very much. This is the link. You can also reach us actually here in these Future of Text video calls. That's the easiest. Otherwise on the Fediverse. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Very, very thoughtful. Yeah, see you later, Jonathan. Thank you for coming. Yeah, really, really cool. Are there any further questions, comments, etc. at this point?
I love this work. This is fantastic. I wanted to report my own different experience, just because of the reality of what we've been doing. So we're doing a WebXR-based multi-person experience, which means that we're sharing state between all the clients. And so I implemented a browser, I mean, a live coding on for the headset, and then I ended up never using it. And the reason was that because we are doing shared state multi-user, and I have video pass-through, it was just easier for me to program live coding on my MacBook and just look at the screen, and it's the same state across all of the WebXR clients. It's not better or worse. It's just that it turned out that after implementing it, I ended up saying, oh, I just type on my screen here because all the clients are sharing state anyway. I have no idea how that relates to what you did, because what you did is awesome. But I find that my comfort zone in programming remains here because I'm so used to it, even if I'm wearing a headset and looking at things around in the room.
I think it will be the case for many people. I think there is many people with different backgrounds. I think it will be a big difference if you start a sort of project inside this environment. I had a I forgot the name. It was a pretty popular big data maintainer. It was a big data application. It was an open source maintainer. He came to me. He said like, "Oh, this is nice. Now I really wanted to try some data and some scripts, which I already have in, let's say, some very Unixy scripting language." I said, "Oh, now I can try it here, and I can start from here." I think for people who already have something going without a shell, I think probably it's gonna be fun, but not really really useful. So I think it's very specific, and yeah, it's also for us sort of interoperability explorations. Like what could a file system in WebXR, how could it map to a 3D scene, and how can we communicate? Like, is there a different text interface to 3D? So I think it takes a certain type of mind to be productive in it, and other people might maybe use it for a little bit for debugging something, and then move onto something else. Because worst case, best case, it's useful. Worst case is just a way to debug stuff and then unplug it from your application.
Sure.
Yeah, it's I think what helps me at least is so the goal to me at least is again always first is to see if it's interesting, if it makes sense, and it's not always the answer is not always yes. And my intuition and my result to such exploration is typically it makes sense in a very isolated way. For example, if I'm writing code that is going to touch on the back end and that has either very little visual impact or that is that will be such process that until you see a sphere, you don't see a sphere, and that sphere has no really way to interact that change much, then probably not worth it to do in the headset. Like again, I have a very convenient high quality screen, nice keyboard, etc. Not worth it. But if it's really tied to the interactions and for example a state, etc., and it's still a lot of unknowns, then it's a lot of back and forth. And then if I can isolate that first in my mind and then in the code, if I don't have to put it on and off again, then that's super valuable. So it comes to a bit that point, but also as Leon mentioned about the kind of XOR native, I guess. The ring is a little bit also going in that kind of exploration that is a bit more letting go of the keyboard. So it wasn't necessarily, I don't think it was shown clearly in the link to the demo that Leon shared of my work there, but the ring aspect to this, and we discussed it but I didn't manage to implement this properly. The rings were pipes basically, and the comments were then, so it's a different way to visualize how the programs or bits of code relate to each other, to kind of give them some kind of embodiment, let's say. And this has been, sadly, it has remained conceptual more than implemented properly from my side. But that was kind of the question indeed, is like, if it remains purely flat, if you have a 2D screen, which is the terminal, useful in some cases, but it's not really leveraging VR or even XR properly. And if you do programming in XR and it's programming, then you might not want the quote-unquote noise of the outside world of AR, so you want it in VR. But then it's more gestures, which are harder to handle. It's more pulling through rings, so that you can chain those rings. So you stack those different pipes, they become a new ring that you can reuse. So again, start to rethink of the programming paradigm, but spatially. But it's still very exploratory. But I think it to be honest, it asks that's the beauty of this project. I think it's we end up with a lot more questions on how to use it. Basically, now that it kind of works, it's not just like, oh, use it and change radically the way you work today, because you do have, like, again, beautiful desk and everything set up exactly the way you want. Is in which kind of context does it make sense to use this, and how can one make it efficiently, which is very open, obviously.
And Brandel.
Yeah, I think we kind of answered it as well, but I'm curious about, so when I type in the terminal, Leon, you had a question about when people are being successful. One of the things I do is I actually will write programs to write out what my terminal contents are, because it's, metaprogramming a bulk rename or some other sort of set of actions that it's close to something that I would write a program for, but it's just that I have automated a set of instructions and things. But irrespective of that, another thing that I end up doing a lot in the terminal is only pasting it in at the last moment, because I have to really refine and massage what that command is, and I have to do that in a text editor itself in order to be able to get it right and kind of take a look at this version versus that version, that kind of thing. So I was curious about what relationship you can construct in a place where the precision is incredibly low in virtual reality versus the sort of this spatial expression, like people having the ability to compose or construct things, and then beyond that, having and you sort of got into this, Fabien, like the fluidity of, once you have things working in a shell, being able to kind of promote those and have a sort of a sliding scale of of interaction with those things. Like how do you compose and construct things in a place that is, let's be honest, like pretty fussy and fastidious, it's the terminal. And how do you then pull successful things out of that and turn them into more fluid components of your runtime environment?
Well, I think we need another video call for that, because that's a question we also have been thinking with. Like we only got to this point to sort of like create the environment. I think Fabien was doing. He went into that space most of but I think we did not really have enough time to really get to that point to actually, like you said, this to basically take this whole virtual world of commands and this whole this broad space of possibilities. For us, it was already a pretty hard decision, like which things are we going to connect. For example, the menu button to a command, that was one thing. Maybe Fabien can also speak a bit about it, but Fabien also came up with ideas like we need to be able to have events, sort of to bridge events, which let's say a gesture to a command execution, or I think at some point again the idea of a gesture manager came up to manage shortcut commands and bind them to gestures. I have a feeling almost in every video call the word gesture manager comes up, so it also came up in this project again. Fabien, do you have some more context on your explorations?
So I think we don't have a lot of time left, unfortunately. As you hinted at before, maybe that's for another discussion. But it's still relevant. It's still tricky. I think honestly, it's part of the deep exploration that you have to reconsider. What does it mean, like when you're in the terminal? So we have the pipe and we have the different signals, and do we want events proper? And but I think also it kind of loops back to Frode's question about, let's say, learning the terminal. I do think it's a bit weird, but I do think if we can make the terminal and the console, the commands rather, more tangible, then it also makes them more accessible to others that do not necessarily have a mind that wants to manipulate abstractions. It might be with cubes, it might be through folding them, manipulate them a certain way. But I fidget all the time, and including when I like play with abstractions. And I think it is there, and I remains convinced it's an intuition really, but that there is something there, not just to be more convoluted and play with it. It's really, I think, even from a pedagogical standpoint, I think it's interesting to explore there.
Do you know what these are, by the way?
No.
They look aviation related.
They are absolutely amazing and aviation related. I'm so glad you said what you said, Fabien, because I'm going to show you guys two picturs. This is where they were used. So World War II, because I went flying this weekend, actually flying. But we were also at Duxford, where they did part of the control of Second World War. So these blocks, the yellow paper on top, that's the squadron intercepting. This is the altitude of the enemies and how many enemies there are.
I don't see anything if you're sharing, sorry.
Am I not sharing? Oh my God.
No, you're not.
Thank you for the warning. Okay, really briefly, this is what they are. So at Duxford, that's one of the places where they ran the air war, World War II. So on top of these blocks, that's the squadron of fighter planes coming in to intercept. This is the altitude, the F-13 or F-9 and all of that. And then blue is how many there were. There is one other image to show you, and that is this. The colors, when you put a block down, you put it in a color. They're 5-minute lengths, little triangles. When it goes to the next color, you know that it's become old, right? And then on the right here, you have the different squadrons, like 242. Are they ready? Are they what are they doing? So when you talk about tangible, this was incredibly tangible. They were moving these things around. And I was going to bring this up in another context, in another call, but what you're talking about in terms of the command line, it isn't just a dry line of text, is it? Right? These have semantic meaning. So if we can find ways to semantically connect these things spatially while keeping the flexibility of a command line, that will be incredibly powerful. So I really look forward to continuing these types of discussions until we really unleash what this is. So today was wonderful. I thank you, and I thank you, and I thank you. Contextual prompts. I'm looking here, Leon. Oh yeah, okay, Fabian, since you mentioned it, the efficiency of the air control. There was someone I knew when I was studying HCI who worked in air traffic control in a country that was militarized at the time, let's put it that way. And I learned that his job was to make planes land and take off. Other people did combat because the mentality of putting planes together, keeping them apart, mentally was so different. They didn't want the same person doing the job. So I think that some of us who are very comfortable with the command line, some of us who are more graphical, are also segregated in a way like that. And I think what is happening with this work has the potential to start bridging that. So it's amazing that you guys have made this tangible for us to continue experimenting. Yeah, see you all Monday week. Let's stick to the schedule and finish the call unless someone has any final comment. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great week.
You too. Bye-bye.